Going on, everyone? So, NBA veteran referee Eric Lewis has officially retired, effective immediately today. He has been investigated by the NBA and decided to, hey, I'm just going to resign, I'm going to retire, and the NBA, of course, stops the investigation. So, obviously, it's caused a lot of sparks and speculation, and we're going to dive into it here. But here's a statement from the NBA in regards to Eric Lewis. So, August 30th, 2023, NBA referee Eric Lewis has informed the league office that he is retiring effective immediately. In light of his decision, the NBA's investigation into social media activity has been closed. So, to bring everyone up to speed that may not be familiar, Eric Lewis was discovered to potentially have a burner account, and this is the account, Blair Cutliff. Now, upon the reveal of this account, it was said that the brother, Eric Lewis's brother, came out and said, hey, no, it was my account. I was the one that created the account. Eric Lewis had nothing to do with it, and it looked like his brother was trying to take the fall in that regards. And the reason that this Blair account even kind of came to light was because people noticed every response, every interaction, everything pertaining to this account was all in regards to like people's negativity towards Eric Lewis and the ref Eric Lewis. And, you know, it was all like either praise or it was all just like, hey. So we have seen lots of like Kevin Durant, for example, get discovered of having burner accounts and stuff like that. Eric Lewis, as far as we know, has not said that it was him. The brother has continued to say like, hey, it was me. But, you know, it's been a very interesting ordeal and matter. And this isn't the first instance that people have pointed to in regards to Eric Lewis. There have been several kind of just theories and rumors and whatnot. Again, I want to be clear that all of this stuff is allegedly. Obviously, him retiring and not going through the NBA probe and kind of bringing everything to light and showing like, hey, it's not me. That obviously is very suspicious and very concerning and kind of makes you question things in that regard. But again, it could just be simple he doesn't want the headache, or maybe the NBA and him spoke about it and they were just like, hey, look, we don't want this to be something that it's not. We don't want it's best to just retire, get your pension, get all that stuff. Because if we do find anything, or if anything's weird or anything's off, right, it could have just been a mutual thing of like the NBA just doesn't want the headache. NBA doesn't have to, answer these questions and have to dig into something and find something and it becomes a mess, right? It's very possible that could have been the case. But it's also possible that Eric Lewis was doing some shady stuff and did have this burner account. And, people have pointed to like his family being Celtics fans. And then if you look and you dig into like the history of him reffing Celtics games, the Celtics always seem to get that favorable whistle. Like last year, a famous game was against the Lakers, right? LeBron James, when he had his meltdown and, Patrick Beverley came and brought the camera, which was just absolute gold. One of the greatest moments ever, in my opinion. That was just hilarious. But, that whole thing was another point of like, dude, this guy is a Celtics fan. This guy is a Celtics lover. Like, even the Celtics player, like Jason Tatum even came out and said, like, no, I clearly fouled the guy. Like, it's been this running sort of story and I guess conspiracy, because again, we don't know for certain that like Eric Lewis has this bias towards the Celtics. His family are Celtics fans. You see all this stuff of like, current mood, let's go Boston, and they're all wearing Celtics jerseys. And now there's this burner account and it just seems all suspicious. And also the last thing the NBA wants is another referee scandal, right? Think of like with Tim Donaghy scandal, right? With all the betting and him exposing refs for making those bets and stuff. And look, I'm not somebody that believes that the NBA is rigged and that sports are rigged and that, it's all these betting syndicates and they run everything and they control everything. Are there things that are suspicious? Are there things that are just like, there's no way? Of course. But that's just sports, right? If you ever played sports, there are all kinds of stuff that just happens, right? And things just seem to line up, or some things just don't seem to line up, or just things happen over the course, especially when you have, 30 plus teams in every league that are all playing, 20, NFL's playing like 17 games. You have baseball's playing, 100 and whatever it is, 30 games, right? NBA play 82 games. Like, you have all these sports playing a large number of games with countless teams. You're going to have variables. You're going to have circumstances. You're going to have human error and just things that seem to fall into this place, right? Like stats. All of the sports books and everything like that are all based on the statistics. You can create your own lines and see what is the line going to be, right? That's how a lot of professional sports bettors do. They go and they run the numbers and they find their own line, and then they see what's the sports book's line, and then they adjust their numbers and make their bets according to that. Because the sports books are just using the information and data to determine those numbers, right? And again, you can do it yourself. And more times than not, it comes and falls around those numbers. Like, people are always like, how is Vegas always right? Because numbers don't lie. It's why, like me, when I'm speaking and I'm going into these, videos and I'm doing these breakdowns and I'm doing my analysis stuff, I use statistics. I bring things to you to say, like, here's the argument, here's the story, here's whatever, here are the stats and information to back said things up. Because numbers don't lie. It's the reason analytics have become such a huge thing in sports, right? Like baseball and basketball and football and all that stuff. It's because more times than not, when the numbers are right, that's going to be the outcome. Do I believe that there is human interference? Absolutely, right? Like Eric Lewis and his family being a Celtics fan, don't you think that there's probably going to be a little bit of bias? Probably. We all know the Allen Iverson story of the referees basically sticking it to AI, right? And AI being like, okay, guys, like when can we stop this type thing, right? Like, you don't think that when a player, barks at the refs or gets in their face or threatens them or says something, you don't think the refs all of a sudden hold this grudge? We have seen it. The last few years has been like plagued with it, where it just seems like these referees believe that people are there for them rather than the players. And I'm not talking about just the Lakers. I'm talking about league-wide. I mean, Jason Tatum got a technical for literally just talking to himself and clapping his hands when he made a bonehead play. Luka Doncic was sitting there screaming at Bertans, his player on his team, or I believe it was Bertans, screaming at him on his team, and the ref gave him a tech. Right? Like, it's just, you see these refs ejecting people for just silly little things, and like just they're putting themselves and interjecting themselves into the games. I don't think that's the sports books. I think that that's just them personally. I think it's people not being able to understand that I have a job my job is to bring ordinance. My job is to remove my emotions, remove my bias, and be the level-headed just kind of orchestrator of this game, right? Because I am dealing with athletes that are highly competitive, that emotions and tension and competitive nature is at an all-time high, and they are just filled with this emotion, and so their responses are going to be just. So I need to be the cool, calm, collected guy. Like, I think that the NBA needs to do better training. I do. I mean, it's been a problem for years now. I mean, some of these games become unwatchable because these refs interject themselves into the game more than they should. Right? Like, I don't have a problem when a ref misses a call or makes a bad judgment call or does whatever, right? Again, it's human nature. It's the eye test. It's, players are crafty. We've heard players, even like Kobe Bryant has talked about, like, he learned where are the refs stationed so he can get away with stuff. You think Kobe's the only one to ever do that, to ever think of that? Of course not, right? So players do things to get away with it, the whole flopping thing. You're going to have human error throughout. I have no problems with that. But referees need to do a better job of removing their emotion and removing their own personal biases or feelings out of the game of basketball. Or we need to move to like a robo-ref world, right? Like, because if they can't take away their emotions and they can't remove their biases, then it becomes a problem. And the last thing the NBA needed was another referee scandal with a veteran referee who's been there forever, and Eric Lewis. And I think that it was probably more likely than not a mutual thing of like, hey, if we find anything, this is going to be a nightmare. Walk away. We'll call off the dogs. It's a win-win for everybody. You get to retire. All's good. You know, there will be a little storm up, but it'll all blow over by the time the season begins, and then everything will be right. That's probably my guess. And I think Eric Lewis was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Like, why wouldn't he? Right? Because, again, if they find anything, they dig up anything that even remotely looks like something, then, one, that's going to get heavily overblown and heavily overproportioned, even if it's nothing. And two, it's going to be another issue and scandal that the media is going to run with, that fans are going to run with, that people are going to run with. I think this was the best course of action, if I'm being honest. But it is very suspicious, right? It is very, like, this is what you guys decided to do, right? Like, you're being investigated, and instead of just saying, like, hey, it wasn't me, and I can prove it, all of a sudden now you're resigning. All of a sudden now you're retiring, you know, not necessarily resigning, but it's basically what this is, right? It's like when your boss goes to you and says, like, we're either going to, like, you can resign or we're going to fire you. Take your pick, right? Like, that's kind of how this feels. Kind of feels like, you know, bosses told Eric Lewis, like, hey, we're going to fire you and it's going to be a big thing, or you just retire and move on and life's good. That's probably how this went, but I don't think that this is some big conspiracy. I mean, these referees make so much money now. I mean, literally. Like, the only way you could pay a ref to throw a game, because you'd never be able to pay off a player. In today's NBA, with, like, you know, role guys that never play making millions of dollars, right? And you'd never be able to control a game through a player unless it's like a big-time play. Like LeBron. Right? Like, if you could get to LeBron and have him throw and fix games, then yeah, you probably could. But you'd have to pay him like $100 million a game. Right? Like, there's just too much money thrown around for these NBA players to ever even do something like that. It makes no sense. Right? Like, and you'd have to bet, as a bettor, would have to bet billions. Right? Like, there's just no way. And even these referees, the referees make millions of dollars now. Right? Like, the referees make so much money now. And have all kinds of deals and stuff like that. And they're getting cuts of, like, brand deals. And, they're getting so much money now. Again, you would have to pay these referees tens of millions of dollars per game. And even Tim Donaghy said, like, we weren't able to fully control games. Like, we would just, you know, throw a whistle here, throw a whistle there if it was close, late, or whatever. But he said, you know, like, he didn't have a perfect track record. Like, they lost games, right? Like, and so the problem is that, like, if you're a bettor, you would have to bet hundreds of millions of dollars per game to cover all of the costs to pay off these people. It's illogical. There's just no way. Like, no sportsbook's going to take those actions without raising some red flags or something, right? Because these sportsbooks aren't going to want to, like, they're not going to be willing to lose hundreds of millions of dollars because somebody's getting fixed. No, from top to bottom, it makes zero sense for there to be this big conspiracy. And then on top of that, think of all the disgruntled refs and players and guys, like, and in the age where nothing is a secret anymore, nothing's came out in the last, like, since the Tim Donaghy thing, like, nothing has came out. There's been no scandal, no exposure, no nothing. No media has pulled that. You don't think that somebody is waiting for one of these downfalls or something? Because it just doesn't exist. Again, it's just, when you run an algorithm constantly, there's going to be X amount of results. The real world, I mean, even in your everyday life, there are just random occurrences in results because it's just life. And then you put sports where it's this constant motion. It just, there's so many possible outcomes, so many possible variations. Like, how do you truly control that? You can't control, you know, the 15th guy on the bench coming off and going off for 30. It's like, where did that come from? You can't control LeBron James having a bad game and, you know, scoring 10 points, or James Harden going 2 for 19. Like, you can't control that. You know, you don't know what, like, referees don't know what the outcome's going to be. You know, could you swing a whistle here or swing a moment here? Sure. But over the course of a game, there's so many variables that are uncontrollable for even the players that you would lose over time. And there just have to be so much money thrown. I don't buy it. Is this odd and suspicious? Absolutely. But he wasn't being accused of gambling or doing anything crazy. He was accused of violating, the refs not showing bias and refs staying off social media and stuff like that. Like, he was not supposed to have this burner account, right? Like, that's what it is. He's not being accused of fixing and rigging games or anything like that. He's being accused of, like, he had this burner account that was very bad and showed that he may have some biases, right? And as a referee, you can't have those things. And so the NBA, the last thing they need is a major scandal like this. It's what it is. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. How do you feel? What do you think? Do you agree with my points? Disagree with my points? What do you think of Eric Lewis retiring? Love to hear it. Let me know.